meningitis that motivated her to start this registered charity. I will let her expand on what drove her to start MRC and what the goals of the organization are, but on a personal note, I would just say that she's an extremely dynamic woman. She's been doing a great job raising the profile and awareness of meningitis and the devastating impact that it can have, especially on young children and teens. So on that note, I'd like to welcome Farah Mir to come and please address everybody.
Thank you. So good evening, my name is Farah Mir. I am the founder and chair of Meningitis Relief Canada. I would like to thank all of you for attending today for World Meningitis Day at Queen's Park. World Meningitis Day aims to stop meningitis worldwide by raising awareness of this devastating and life-threatening disease. The day is dedicated to educating the public about the signs and symptoms of meningitis, the need for urgent medical attention, and the importance of vaccinations. For those of you who may not know, meningitis is the inflammation of the protective membranes which cover the brain and spinal cord. Meningitis can strike at any time, and within hours it can lead to lifelong disability or death. For meningitis, time is of the essence, so early detection and treatment are critical to a good prognosis. If it's not diagnosed and treated early, there can be severe consequences in terms of brain damage, mental and physical disabilities, or death. Meningitis Relief Canada is a registered charity that raises awareness and provides grief and bereavement counseling and financial assistance to individuals who have been affected by meningitis. I founded this organization after my son contracted bacterial meningitis at 1 week old. After displaying fever, lethargy, and irritability, we had taken him to our local hospital where eventually we were sent home without a diagnosis. We then had taken him to a walk-in clinic where, again, we were sent home without a diagnosis. And although the doctors were telling us that he was fine, something in my heart was telling me he wasn't right, and decided to take him to the Hospital of Sick Children in Toronto, where, following a lumbar puncture, he was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis and sepsis. After 3 weeks of treatment at Sick Kids, fortunately, my son made a full recovery. Today he is a healthy and happy 2-year-old, but we are truly grateful to have him with us today. I know how easily our circumstances could have been very different. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about why he came out of this unscathed when others do not. Meningitis is devastating and is nothing less than heartbreaking for the individuals and families involved. There's a continued need to raise life-saving public awareness about this disease. I would ask all of you to read through the printed material that is being distributed. Knowing the signs and symptoms and seeking medical attention immediately, as well as taking preventative measures through current vaccinations, can mean the difference between life and death. Thank you.
Before I introduce our next speaker, I'd just like to take a minute to recognize many of the MPPs who are here tonight. We have with us Michael Prue, thank you for coming, Sherry DeNovo, MPP Sylvia Jones, Deepika Damerla, Teresa Armstrong, Todd Smith, Minister Linda Jeffries was here, she just left, Jagmeet Singh, of course, our very, very strong supporter, and I think I mentioned Sherry DeNovo. Did I miss anybody? If I missed anyone, oh. Thank you for coming. So thank you all for coming. We know you're very busy people. Oh, and of course, France Julinas, how are you? We had the opportunity to meet with her earlier, and she's a strong supporter as well. So I'd like to just provide everyone with a bit of a perspective from Dr. Hirotaka Yamashiro, who is an Ontario-based pediatrician in practice for 14 years. He graduated from U of T, and where he trained in pediatrics. And he was a fellow in pediatric respirology at the Hospital for Sick Children, and since 2004 he's been the chair of the pediatric section of the Ontario Medical Association, and he also served as on the Pediatricians Alliance of Ontario. So with a wealth of knowledge about meningitis, and especially in the field of pediatrics, we're very fortunate to have him here today to say a few words on World Meningitis Day.
Thank you very much. Really, really happy to be here because I think as pediatricians, we are really the medical specialists on the front line of seeing the devastation you see from meningitis. Meningitis is one of these conditions as a primary care pediatrician with my own patient. It's one of those things you never really want to diagnose in a child, and obviously if it happens, we certainly still have very great world-class healthcare in this province to treat that. As you've just heard, you can certainly get the level of care you need that's really unprecedented anywhere in the world. Because this is about education and awareness, I wanted to quickly just talk about who we are as pediatricians. Pediatricians are, as many of you probably know, specialists for children and infants from 0 to 18 years of age. And as the contrast would be, unlike south of the border in the United States, where you have well over 95,000 pediatricians for a population of 330 million. In Canada, we only have about 3,300 pediatricians for a population of 33 million. So you can see right away that the value of pediatricians has to go beyond direct patient care, and that's why I'm really happy to be here to speak about education and awareness, because when you have a smaller group of specialists who care about this issue, you really need to amplify the ability to educate and raise awareness so that even one child, two child that's saved by that increased education and awareness, it makes all the difference in the world. I think you talk to any parent that's been touched by this disease, it can be very devastating. We've heard a very personal story about how this disease can look very benign in the beginning, and sometimes every minute counts when you're trying to make the diagnosis. But rewinding before that, certainly the role of vaccinations and immunization in this day and age where a lot of parents go to Dr. Google and find out their own information, it's really more important than ever that they know they're getting good information from medical professionals that they trust with evidence-based recommendations. And there's no question that vaccinating against meningococcal disease is not only a lifesaver, but in terms of the benefits you get, it's really, really critical. And in particular, we've done a great job of now covering for several big strains of meningococcal disease. There's a big gap for strain B that we're now going to finally be able to vaccinate against. So I'm really happy that somebody's taken the initiative to not only designate April 24th as World Meningitis Day, but I think that could be not only a launching pad for better education and awareness of healthcare professionals, the public. Pediatricians have a big role to play in that, and we hope that we're invited to play a big role in that. And then if it's a yearly event, every year we can remind ourselves how much work we've done, how much more work we have to do, because there's a rising tide of anti-immunization sentiment that's quite frankly misguided, and these people need to look in the eye, people who had a child, a teenager, an infant affected by meningitis, and be able to still talk about whatever views they have with that person in front of them. So I'm really happy to be here in support of this initiative. I congratulate you for that. Thank you very much.
I'd just also like to recognize MPP Yakabuski and MPP Bas-Belkacem, who have just joined us. Thank you for coming. Our next speaker is MPP from Bramley-Gore-Malton, a huge supporter of MRC, Jagmeet Singh, as he always corrects me. He is a representative from the New Democratic Party. He has been a huge support as we organized our first Queen's Park Day here at Queen's Park.
Where's the Sergeant at Arms?
Of course, focal point of our day here today was when Jagmeet introduced a private member's bill asking for April 24th each year to be declared Meningitis Awareness Day. And it's a symbolic gesture, seemingly small, but it's something that can really have a huge impact in terms of rallying support and attention around the day. We thank him for introducing that bill, and on that note, I'd like him to please come and make some remarks.
Thank you very much, and once again, I would like to echo the sentiments of Sarjeet Kaur in saying thank you for everyone that's attended today and taking the time out. I have to correct one thing before I continue. When I first introduced the bill, I stood up and I recognized Christine Elliott for showing her support, but I was remiss and I didn't recognize Deepika Damirla for also showing her support. So can we get a round of applause for Deepika Damirla as well and her support and her comments in the statement. So today I introduced a bill. It's a private member's bill that would mark April 24th as World Meningitis Day here in Ontario. We've heard a personal story. Farah Kamiri is also one of my constituents, and the organization is registered out of my riding, so I have a personal connection to it that way. But I've come to learn, and her personal story is quite telling, that the disease is one of those that it's completely treatable if detected early. And that's why awareness is so crucial, that if we have a proper platform to promote awareness, education, knowing the symptoms, and also just being able to question that, could this be a case of meningitis when you're bringing in particularly someone young, could literally mean the difference between life and death. And I think that's a small but very meaningful gesture if we create a platform where we can promote awareness so that we could save any number of lives. But this is something that we can definitely do. We've talked about that the impacts are devastating. Meningitis is one of those diseases, and we've heard from the doctor, and thank you so much for your remarks. It's a disease that progresses so quickly that literally minutes make an incredible difference in the success or failure of someone's recovery. So it's so crucial that we promote this awareness so we can prevent any needless losses. The organization, I've just quickly recognized, Meningitis Relief Canada. It's a registered Canadian charity. It's in my riding, and has a mandate to improve the lives of individuals and families affected by meningitis. They do great work in raising awareness and promoting the disease and steps to recognize the symptoms across Ontario and across Canada. We all need to just look at the simple gesture that if we can all come together on an initiative that's not partisan, an initiative that's literally about saving lives, and we can make a difference in this province, we can make a difference in the lives of people in Ontario in a meaningful way by just letting people know about the existence of this disease. So I ask you all to support this initiative. It's something meaningful, it can make a big difference, and it all takes just a little bit of cooperation, and I think we can do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Jagmeet. Your support has been really amazing, and for doing that and introducing the private members bill. Interestingly enough, some of you may not know this is the second time that a private members bill has been brought forward to ask for April 24th to be declared World Meningitis Day in Ontario. It was previously brought before the House by Liberal MPP Leonor Pendergast, who also had support of all three parties, and it did manage to make it to second readings, but then did not make it to third readings. So let's keep our fingers crossed that this time we'll see it through, and April 24th will in fact be declared World Meningitis Day in Ontario. So we have a very special guest who has joined us, and we're thrilled that she's taken time out of her very, very busy schedule to be here. She is none other than our Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, the Honourable Deb Matthews. She's also the deputy leader of the party, and thank you so much for joining us. In the way of introduction, although she does not need too much, Deb Matthews was re-elected into the riding of London North Centre in 2011 for the third consecutive term, and currently serves as the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, Deputy Premier. She has previously served as the Minister of Children and Youth Services and the Minister responsible for women's issues. As the minister responsible for one of the largest and most challenging portfolios, she really does strive to serve all Ontarians with excellence each and every day in an area that impacts us and our families and our loved ones almost every day in a personal way. So thank you for joining us, and please share some remarks.
Thank you. Well, it's a real pleasure and honor to be here, and I'm delighted that several members of my caucus are here as well. I want to say thank you, Farak, for turning what would have been an extraordinary experience into what it is. So congratulations and thank you for that. When I heard the story of what happened to you, Michael was telling me, and he said, because when he first told me, I was heartbreaking, and he said, "Don't worry, it has a happy ending." So very happy, but we know that there are others for whom the ending is not happy. So thank you for bringing this awareness to us today. In 2004, we introduced vaccinations. And so now we've got 2 vaccinations, one for little infants and another at grade 7. We would, of course, much rather prevent meningitis as often as possible. But, of course, if somehow someone still gets it, we need to do what you're advocating, what we do, recognize the signs and trust our maternal and paternal instincts. Parents know when something isn't right, and I think that's a big message that you're bringing forward, is to trust your parental instincts. Interestingly, earlier this week we had a breakfast right here of people advocating for immunizations. So it's interesting that twice in 1 week we have advocacy for the same thing. We heard from Alison McGeer at that breakfast that we know that when people take advantage of vaccinations, we actually do see a measurable decrease in the incidence. So again, I want to say thank you for your advocacy. I'm very happy that to see this private members bill being supported by more than one party. It is not a partisan issue. We want all our kids to be safe and healthy. So I just want to say thank you, and we're right with you.
And now I'd just like to ask MPP John Yakabuski to make some remarks on behalf of the Ontario PC Party, and he also was kind enough to make some remarks in the House earlier today regarding meningitis and Meningitis Relief Canada.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Minister Matthews for joining here today as well. Well, I didn't know I was going to be making any remarks, so I have it here. I did speak in the House today a little bit about this, and I'm glad I had the opportunity, and I'm glad that I was on the speaking rotation today. April 24th, that's the appropriate day. Today, our granddaughter, Lily Elma Joan Coburn, is 1 year old. But let me tell you about Lily's mother, Heidi. On November 2nd, 1993, Heidi came home feeling very sick. So my wife took her to the hospital, and they really didn't understand what was wrong. She came home, and during the night, Heidi was moaning in such pain she couldn't even walk. She could barely crawl. We got Heidi to Pembroke, to the hospital in Pembroke, and Dr. Baxter immediately believed, based on the conversation that my wife had on the phone, that Heidi was suffering from meningococcal.
It's okay.
Some water.
No, I was looking for beer. Beer's much better than water. So they immediately began treatment on Heidi, and the ambulance then, they sent my wife ahead to Ottawa. They're heading to Chio. And they told Vicky to go ahead because we're going to be driving very fast. And thank you, Deepika. And at Arnprior, you guys wouldn't know some of you would know the riding, but they went from Pembroke to Ottawa. In Arnprior, the ambulance passed my wife. Can you imagine what she went through on the rest of the drive to Ottawa, wondering, yes, my daughter's in that ambulance, but is she alive? They told us after 1 hour. I'm sorry. 1 hour without treatment would have been 1 hour too much. 1 hour more. So many people didn't, they contracted that and they didn't survive. Many people who did survive suffered brain damage, permanent disabilities. Heidi, we're thankful, she has some scarring, no other issues. And a beautiful daughter. So, April 24th, I'm 100% behind this day. Thank you for doing this, and I apologize for being emotional. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those heartfelt words. And one of the things we have definitely learned today is, as we talk to people, how many people have been impacted, whether someone in their family or a friend or a loved one or someone in the workplace. It really does impact many, many people. I'd like to thank everyone again for joining us today. I would like to recognize especially MPP Deepika Zamerla, who has been very supportive, made a wonderful statement earlier today. Her office has been phenomenal in helping us pull this day together. Big round of applause for Deepika Zamerla as well. And I would also like to recognize MPP France Chalinas, who we met with earlier today. Again, was extremely knowledgeable, astute, and open to hearing with us and helping us in our goal to declare April 24th World Meningitis Day and help all of those people who are suffering and have been impacted. I'd like to ask all of the MPPs and FREC to please join for a group photo, and then everyone can get back to enjoying and drinking.